Hayward working left side on Durant. Ball fakes, goes up and under, scores. Oh, he just faked Kevin Durant out of his socks and shoes on the left side.
This is Gordon Hayward. There we go. Remember, play with the pass.
That's not what I wanted you to say, Gordon. I wanted you to do this.
This is Gordon Hayward.
There we go.
Ready to tip it off. Are you? Let's do this.
Oh, we try to be professional. We can't do it. NBA 5 coming up. Some interesting things. Thunder pursuing Brook Lopez. Interesting name available in trades. And then we'll dig deep on the Jazz. Enes Kanter's future. More on Derek Favors. And Gordon Hayward, an ISO stud. It's all coming up on today's edition of Tip Off. Pow. Oh, played tennis with my wife yesterday. Can't even move my arms. Hope you're well. Thanks very much for tuning in. I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA Insider. You can follow us on Facebook at Locked On Sports or David Locke. We have a really cool Google Plus community called Locked On Sports, and you can follow all the local teams, the hot Ute basketball team there, a bunch of notes there as well on that. As well as anything going on with BYU and their battle last night with Pacific. It's kind of the sports community page. Follow me on Twitter at Locked On Sports as well. If you get a chance to leave 5 stars on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you are listening to this podcast, it would be greatly appreciated. Those are very helpful to how we get placed and people find us. So it's great if you can do all those things. Really appreciate it. Fun daily DeVar. Jazz had yesterday. Derek Favors went out and did a big Ronald McDonald House. Derek really so involved with the community, with the Mountain America, pass it along, and then this was with the Ronald McDonald House and becoming kind of their ambassador. Derek just embedded himself in this community and is doing wonderful things. Lived here all off season, as you know. Huge community involvement from being a crossing guard one day to Boys and Girls Club the next. Cool stuff. Then finally, Joe Ingles was up at Ecker Hill here in Park City and in Jeremy Ranch area, and a bunch of my friends were texting me, this guy's incredible. He's so great. So it was cool to get that feedback back from friends of mine who Joe was interacting with yesterday. So great, nice to see us out in the community doing our stuff. The guys practiced for about 2 hours yesterday, and then went out and did their various community involvement. So busy day, and thank you very much to them. And that is our daily DeVar. For those who don't know the daily DeVar, it's kind of the good thing to remind us when we get all antsy and uptight about the sports world, about what's going on today. All right, questions Friday. So I always want to take all of your questions on Friday. I don't want to leave anything out by the end of the week, so I try to take all the questions on Friday. Sometimes during the week, you well know that I will not get to the questions due to various reasons. Usually having to get the kids ready for school. They win over you every time. Sorry, it's just the reality. And so I will try to get to your questions, so submit those if you're watching live or already. All right, let's get to it. Let's get to the good old NBA 5. Boy, my computer's slow today. All right, Rudy doesn't want to say it.
Rudy Gobert, and you are Locked On Jazz.
Wow, I wonder what I must have everything running, because this thing is working at a snail's pace again today. Some interesting things last night. First, the Houston Rockets took 6 mid-range entire game at 86 shots yesterday against Oklahoma City. They took some mid-range non-paint or non-restricted area paint twos, but just 6 non-paint mid-range twos in the entire game. The other one in that game is that when we were in Oklahoma City, there was this piece that I just couldn't get behind. The question and answer afterwards with Kevin Durant was awesome, but the piece was that Scott Brooks, his offense sucks and it's terrible despite the fact they've been ranked top 5 every year. And moreover was that partially because it relies completely on Durant and Westbrook, it should rely completely on Durant and Westbrook. And last night they had this great shot distribution and they were terrible. So I would still argue that they're much better off when Durant and Westbrook are using most of their possessions and not screwing around with Dion Waiters and other players using possessions like they did last night. Fact is, John Schumann did a piece the other day on this. Durant is the #1 isolation player in the NBA by far. So, yeah, sure, maybe at times if you're running him off motion and you're getting him moving and bringing him off picks, and he had a and he had an edge in that way that maybe it would be better for him, I guess. But frankly, not a lot better because this guy is the best there is in the NBA at isolation. He's shooting 55.6%. He gets 1.25 points per isolation this year. Give him the ball. Let him go to work. He's the best there is in the league. So I think sometimes this whole discussion idea that somehow there's supposed to be more movement and their offense is screwed up, I'm going with the end results on this, and the end result is that they're generally a top 5 offense in the NBA, and Westbrook and Durant have prospered, and those are the players you want having the ball on the floor. LeBron was great last night, but that's scary that that's what it takes for Cleveland to win, is for LeBron to be that good. Really crazy. Austin Rivers traded to the Clippers. The Clippers just equivalently, cut Jordan Farmar and traded Reggie Bullock to get Austin Rivers. That's a terrible deal. Like a really terrible deal. First of all, Reggie Bullock can shoot, which Austin can't do. I'm not sure what Austin Rivers' NBA skill is. I liked him out of college. I just think I was wrong. I just think I was wrong. I think I missed it. I thought he could get to the basket and drive and do all sorts of things, and he can't. I cannot figure out what the Clippers are doing with that. And a team that seems so fragile, bringing in Doc Rivers' son seems like a really bad idea. Interesting to see if the Clippers, what goes on with the Clippers. They're not good enough right now to win the West, and that's the expectation of Steve Ballmer. And this is a good test on a first-year owner. The big news circulating in the NBA last night was that Oklahoma City was on the verge of getting Brook Lopez. Stevenson would end up in Brooklyn, and the deal's fallen apart. But the concept of Lopez to Oklahoma City is really interesting to me on about 3 levels. One, if they're just the easy answers are giving up like Kendrick Perkins and Jeremy Lamb. All right, so they're basically giving up nothing for a guy who's pretty good. It seems like that's a really no-brainer deal, and yet I don't like it. So how can you give up nothing and get something and not like it? Well, one, Lopez can't pass. Lopez, if the idea is you're going to get a low post force in Lopez and that's somehow going to open up anything for Durant and Westbrook, it's not. Okay? It's simply not going to do it. Because Lopez averages 0.5 assists a game. He's one of the worst passing bigs in the league. And you got to be able to pass as a big in this day and age. So I think that I question that. 2, I think he clogs the middle and takes away Durant and Westbrook's passing lanes. Maybe no less than Kendrick Perkins or Steven Adams does, and so therefore they're still running the same system, and Ibaka spreads the floor a little bit. So I'm not sure I get that. Number 3, I think it slows them down. Lopez is a slow player unless their vision is they can play fast, and then when they get in the half court, Lopez works. Okay, I'm trying to understand it. The bigger reason is it seems like a sign of desperation to me, and maybe they are desperate. With Durant's free agency circling around in the next 14 months, and the possibility that if they don't make the moves and get going, Durant leaves and their whole run is over, or that Westbrook heads to the Lakers, or that Durant heads to the Lakers, maybe they are feeling an incredible amount of pressure and a need to go make some moves to be able to really push through, and this one feels like it doesn't fit, but it's the best out there, and they've got to show some commitment, and so there's a level of desperation to it. That's just my thought on it. And the final thing is, they're obviously not totally clicking in. I've talked about this all year long. They played the easiest schedule in the NBA. They're now playing the hardest schedule. They're going to lose games. And they're going to make the playoffs, but it's not going to be easy, and it's going to be tight. And Phoenix is playing well, which is making it more difficult for him. Not only is that, Phoenix is just scoping every kind of low-level player that people are giving up on that has value in the league. Tip of the hat to Phoenix. And I just think there's a huge level of panic a little bit right now. And the other thing I don't like is if you add Lopez now, you've already been out of sync all year long trying to assimilate all these pieces. Now you're assimilating another one with no margin of error. I don't like it. We'll see whether it works or not, and see what happens with it. That, my friends, is your NBA 5.
Hi, this is Derek Favors. I want to hear from you. Call 801-200-3738 and ask me a question. That's 801-200-3738 to ask me a question.
All right, let's dig in on the Jazz. First one, on that isolation piece that John Schumann did, the fifth best isolation player in the NBA this year is Gordon Hayward. How about that? Number one isolation player in the NBA is Kevin Durant. Going one-on-one. Gordon Hayward is number 5. Wasn't anywhere near it last year. Last year, top 5 was... He was not in it. Top 5 right now are Durant, Derrick Rose, Klay Thompson, Chris Paul, Gordon Hayward. Gordon Hayward, top 5 in the NBA isolation player, shooting 49% on his ISOs, 1.06 points per possession on his isolations. Pretty impressive. Game changer on who Gordon is as a player. Interesting also, the guys that are up top, Durant and Derrick Rose, haven't played a lot. Klay Thompson, hard to envision him getting any isolations in the way that offense moves. And then Chris Paul, who has the most. The 100 isolation seems to be quite a lot also, by the way. Damian Lillard has 104. Ryan Anderson, of all things, has 103. Wonder how they define that. Dirk has 120, which seems to be the most. So, interesting little note there on Gordon, and tip of the hat to him for his progression and development and strength and understanding of the game. I talked to Derek a little bit yesterday. I wrote a lengthy piece, which I hope you've read, on weareutahjazz.com. Every now and then I do something, and I really hope you read it. Like, I really hope you read it. Like, if you watch this is nice. We're all just kind of friends hanging out having coffee. But on that one, I really hope you read it, because I think, one, it took a lot of work, and actually we talked about a lot of it on the show, but I think you understand. There's just some cool stuff in it. Some charts and a lot of stuff you saw here, actually. But anyway, I hope you read it. And I was talking to Derek about it the other night. I thought he had more to his offensive game than I'd seen out of him before. And his comment was, he actually goes, I was kind of in a zone. It just started rolling, and I felt good about it. Derek was kind of oblivious to the fact that he had 4 2010s in the last 5 games. He seemed oblivious to the fact that he's scored 20 points They'd scored 20 points in more games this year than he had all of last year. Interesting, just such a humble guy, but really is becoming quite a player. He actually spent a little time before practice yesterday, one-on-one with Quinn Snyder. Quinn was working on some things with him. The way they do practice is they do something called BP, batting practice concept, where each of them go work with individual coaches in various settings of what they're working on their game for if they practice at 11 from about 10:30 to 11, and then the team practice starts at 11. And Derek was with Quinn during that period of time. I did a show today with DJ and PK. They asked, where I thought Kanter's future was, or how the whole future thing. I think this is important to think about. I suspect Kanter is not going anywhere. And I think that's important for all of us to realize. Dennis Lindsay has said numerous times, we're not skipping steps. We're going to live through the pain of our young players developing, and we're certainly going to try to avoid the circumstance by which one of our young players develops for another team. Now, there's a chance that the Jazz have to make, almost at some point, the Jazz have to make a bad trade. Right? Like if the Jazz read the lineup of how things are going to play out and they suddenly look at it and realize, it's just not going to work and we're not going to get anything for them, there's a point in this process where the Jazz could make a bad trade. That's distinctly possible. At the time, we'll probably grumble, but probably have to try to understand it a little bit. There's also, here's where I think there's a lot of scenarios. And when I say most likely, I'm not talking 50%. Like I'm thinking probably my first scenario here is 20%, my next scenario is like 16%, and then the next one's like 14, and there's like 8 more of them. So, most likely is most likely. It doesn't mean likely. It just means most likely. But I think the chances that Kanter goes into restricted free agency, the market does not yield the offer that his agent wants. He's already guaranteed about $7 or $8 million next year, just the way his contract works, he takes the tender offer from the Jazz. The Jazz will tender him. The Jazz can tender him by the way, and then I think on July, whatever, and then at some point in the middle of July, they could actually waive the tender if they have a player they want to sign, up to a certain point. So there's no reason why the Jazz will. He goes through restricted free agents similar to Greg Monroe and some other players we've seen, doesn't get the offer he wants, and decides at that point he has no choice but to come back as a free agent next year. Now, Enes is a good dude, so you're not going to be working in a circumstance where he's going to become so selfish or hurt the team, or that's not who he is. So you're fine with that if you're the Jazz. At which point, then he's a free agent. Then you got to figure out what you can do. You can't match any offers. Okay. The other scenario here is that Enes decides he wants the money now. Like, I don't want to take that risk. I've seen Alec get hurt. I've seen too much. I've had injuries. I've had 2 surgeries. And he goes out in the market. Somebody looks at the Jazz situation as well. They've played Hayward. They've paid Favors. They have Gobert coming up through the ranks. And they're not going to match on Kanter. And so let's go give Kanter a 4-year, 32, 4-year, 40, 4-year, $44 million deal, and the Jazz won't match. I think there's a chance at that point the Jazz match. And that then the Jazz, if there's a salary cap issue a few years later, you deal with it then. So I think the most likely scenarios, those are the two, have Kanter back next year, and Kanter back possibly longer. And for that, I think it's really important to understand that as he develops what he's doing and, trying to learn and improving defensively and doing all these various things, that it's important to let these things happen and give him some room. I've preached this time and time again, but this is the first time he's ever started in the NBA. This is a brand new experience for him. Look at how much better Derek and Gordon are in the second year they've started. I'm sure the Jazz would like to watch Enes Kanter the second year he started and see how he learns and how he develops out of it. If he doesn't, move on. If he does, then you really might have something. Nick Stoiskis is available from Sacramento. He's having a terrible year. I do know the Jazz really liked him in the draft. I know they batted his name around at 5 as a possibility. I don't know how you could get him, but it's interesting he's available. It's interesting to try to evaluate him when he was just terrible last year, or so terrible so far this year. I have heard through various sources that DeMarcus Cousins might be simply the worst teammate that exists on the planet. And so that is... and that is worth noting. I just got a text from the president of the team, so that's what I'm not so secure in my livelihood that the president of the team texts me and then I ignore it until I'm done with the podcast. Sorry, guys. So it's interesting. I mean, is it really an environmental thing where you think that he becomes a better person or a better situation and a better player in a different situation? He actually can hit open shots. I mean, this league is brutal, and it's so hard to make that adjustment. He's not an elite athlete, and maybe he's just not athletic enough to play in this league. So it would be a big gamble, but 6'6", can handle a little bit. It's an interesting 2, can space the floor, is long. There's a lot to like about him. People loved him out of the draft. All right, let's get to the questions on a Friday question day, see what we got, because that is all I have on my notes. I have a few more things, but I figure that's probably enough. All right, let's go to him. From Riley Lewis will lead us off on the questions today. Both Gordon and Derek have taken noticeable leaps in each of the last 2 seasons. Do you envision either of them having another leap next year? I don't think Gordon's got anywhere else to go. He's really good. Maybe just experience and understanding time and, just game experience. But like leap, your word is, will they continue to develop and get better? Yes. Will they leap? No. Favors last 5 games has been a leap. So Favors last 5 games has been a leap. Will that become a 30 game, a 40 game? That's a huge leap if it is. I mean, that's a mammoth leap if it is. That's a leap. Kirk Nielsen, when you started tweeting about players mentioned in trade talks, it makes me suspicious. I think Stoiskis is an interesting case. No, I don't know. I've said this before. I think the Jazz have very little ability to get a lot done here at the trade deadline. Somebody asked me the other day about Trevor Booker, which I don't know why the Jazz would want to trade him. He's such kind of what you got to realize. What would the Jazz have to get back if you trade like Trevor Booker, who's kind of the toughness of this team, good veteran, great guy? Like, what are you going to get back that makes that worth it? His value to us is probably more than his value to somebody else. You get a late first round pick, I guess. But why? So you can just get younger again with a player that may or may not make the league? I mean, maybe. But I'm not sure that any of those teams need a Trevor Booker. Like, go look through the best teams in the Western and Eastern Conference and try to figure out what Trevor Booker plays a lot for him, right? I don't know if that's the case. Clippers probably use him. I think the Clippers have moved their draft pick for Doc Rivers. So I'm, Steve Novak's expiring contract at the end, or has got a year left, I think, which, maybe the Jazz, somebody decides that his shooting, I mean, that's a really special skill. We haven't used it, but it's a really special skill. Otherwise, like, what are we moving, right? Like, so I think there's, I guess I should be careful about that and not do that because people think there's something coming from the organizational level on that, and there's not. I think it's a very interesting case that here's the early first-round pick that they're willing to move after they've already blown Thomas Robinson, they've already blown Jimmer Fredette, Sacramento's run here is just ridiculous of failed draft picks. You've talked a lot about the Jazz shooting from the right spots. We just don't have great shooters. What would the offense look like if we were league average shooters shooting from locations we did? It'd be good. We're not shooting from as good a spots as we did earlier this year. We've broken down a little bit on that. When we get some shooters, it's going to be really interesting to see how this offense works. Look at Atlanta. Watch Atlanta. Atlanta is really exciting for us. The fact that Atlanta's playing this well is very exciting if you're a Jazz fan. Is there anything you've seen that suggests Favors is better when Rudy is getting minutes? It's a little counterintuitive, but you think it would hurt spacing? Your thoughts? He started the year terribly just terribly with Rudy on the floor. It's gotten a little bit better. I haven't updated my notes on this because I just didn't think it was a storyline for the day. In fact, I've taken it out of my notes. The only thing is that maybe he's going up against small forwards or power forwards. He's bigger and stronger there, where he's been smaller than all the centers he's been playing. Rudy's a better passer than Enes. Enes has got to pass the ball better. I don't know. It does seem counterintuitive. It does not. There's no statistic. We don't have enough statistics to know what is true or what not. I don't get all the talk of trading Kanter. I expect him to re-sign Kanter, keep him as an asset, and see if he can go another step like Favors has. If Jazz decided Favors already reached his ceiling by his fourth year, they would have been very wrong. Right. You're exactly right. When you evaluate players and when you evaluate teams, ask yourself two questions about them. Has the player done the role that they're doing that season? Okay? If not, let them learn that role for the year and evaluate them a year later. Okay? That's one. Two, by the way, if Trey's really turned a corner here, it's not surprising. It's at about game 100 of his career. Right? We'll see. He's played 5 brilliant games. Or really good games. I don't know if I want to say he's totally turned the corner. He's got some limited athletic skills and things that are going to prevent him. But let's say Trey has turned the corner. He did it at game 100. Not surprising. And then he turns the next corner at game 170 when he figures out. That's how this works. So first thing is ask yourself, have these players done? Has the player on teams? Ask yourself that. Right? If you look at us right now, Trey has, I guess, been a starting point guard before in the NBA. Joe's never done what he's doing before. Gordon has been the go-to primary guy, number one on the offense. Derek Favors has done what he's doing before. It looks pretty good. Number 3, Kanter's never started in the NBA before. Rodney Hood's never played off the bench. Dante Exum's never played off the bench before in the NBA. Trevor Booker has done what he's done before. Looks pretty good doing it. Rudy's actually doing something brand new. Looks fabulous doing it, but still it's going to take some time. Right? That's Elijah Millsap's never done. Go back to Phoenix and their big surprise team. All of their guys had done this before. Dragic had started. Morris had started. P.J. Tucker had started. Guys had come off the bench. The guy Plumlee starting center was like the one guy who hadn't done his role before. That's right. Like, it's not surprising. The other thing to start looking at when you look at teams and evaluate at the beginning of the season, how many of them have played together? Cleveland, with all this mixing match, of course they look terrible. Atlanta, Washington. Who are the good Eastern Conference teams? Atlanta, Washington, Chicago. I'm forgetting somebody in the East. Surprising. Like, you forgot somebody in the minor league baseball. I can't imagine. Okay, Washington, all this, that's the returning 5 with Paul Pierce. Okay. Chicago, returning with a 12, 13-year veteran, Pau Gasol. Okay. And frankly, Gasol and Noah are struggling a little bit. Atlanta, same guys. Al Horford, 8-year veteran, integrated in, has been through all their camps before. Continuity is everything. Toronto, exact same guys. That's the team I forgot. From Trent, Kanter's 22. You're right. He's got a lot of things to learn. Could be a stud. My concern on him is I can't figure out who he is in the league. That's the only question I have. I tried to figure out who he is. From Cody, I think we can all agree Jeremy Evans has some deficiencies, but I'm somewhat expected to see him get more playing time this year. Is there anything you're seeing in practice elsewhere that makes sense for all of his bench time? Like, who's he playing in front of? Trevor Booker? Rudy Gobert? Enes Kanter? Derek Favors? Love Jeremy, but what do you think the win threshold is where we start surrounding our young team with veterans and begin to run for the top 40 wins? Do we wait out regardless for Dante and Gobert to develop? Cheers. I think the latter. I think we wait for Dante and Gobert. And then they're supplemented by Gordon and Derek, and we see what other pieces assimilate around them. See how Trey develops, see how Alec develops, see how Enes develops. They're all doing things for the first time, basically. Alec was a first-year starter and didn't get the whole year. That's a big step. That's too bad. Get a draft pick this year. Right now we're 6th. Trey seems to be playing much better lately. Do you think something finally clicked with him? He's turning the corner to be a solid point guard. I think a few things. One, I think he's worked hard. 2, I think the night he missed and Dante didn't play well helped him. I think he's played 104 games in the NBA. He's getting better. His start is, there's no question, though, let's be honest about Trey. His 37% shooting percentage to start his career is scary. There aren't a lot of guys in the history of the league who've had this as their shooting numbers that have then gone on to have NBA careers. In fact, there's none. So he's got to keep the shooting on an uptick. Last 5 games for Trey, 19 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 51% shooting, 44 from 3 and 80 overall. Do you guys care? I wonder if you guys care. This is, oh, it's small right now. These are my notes. This is what I keep. I got something wrong with my screen where it's web layout, print layout, full screen reading. Yeah, so this is what I have in front of me. So the left during game. The left is all of our highs and lows for the season. These are team trends, storylines that I am going to get to during the game. Road playing I won't get to, but so I at some point want to talk about how crazy young our roster is. We have the 3rd youngest opening night roster as of January 3rd. We still had the 3rd youngest roster over here. Teams combined points of 23 and younger. We lead the league by a lot. This is a little old. Fewest games combined, career games played on current roster. We have by far the fewest. Like, these are kind of storylines that I get to. Favors Gobert. Oh, this was second chance points since December 1. It's really been a huge part of our game. And then favors Gobert playing together. Over here, I may be boring you to death. You probably don't care about this, but if you're 30 minutes in, you might. These are various shooting area notes I have about our team. Player shot locations. So Trey, left corner 3, 6 to 12. I probably need to update that, see if that's true. Restricted areas at 53, was at 48 last year. That's how I know this stuff. I don't remember any of this off the top of my head. It's all Trey, 10 of his last 14 in the restricted area, 12 of his last 26 from mid-range, 41% on corner 3s, right corner. He's 6 of his last 10. That's interesting. So left corner earlier this year. I don't think this is up to date. Sorry, I went too fast. Then I have, these are the basic things I know I might go to in a given night. So here are my player notes. This is what they're averaging on the year. This is what they averaged last year. Certain notes on Hayward. He's 3 of his last 20 from threes, 41 of his last 46 from the line. He's struggling in January, 41 of 23. So those are all there. Trey Burke last 5. Derek, January, last 5 games, 60%, 21%. Kanter, 3 of his last 26 from outside 16 feet. I actually got to check that. Let's delete that. Actually, it's not working to edit right now. Here's his last 5. He's 5 of 17 mid-range. He's struggling with his mid-range shot. Here's a bunch of Gobert notes, Exum notes. These are stats view stuff that I don't get to very often. And then these are all my deep down player notes, things they've done where I might jump, if Derek's having a good game, I might want to find his other best games he's ever had, which are right here. I probably should update. He said he only had 1 game over 22 points in all of 13-14. He had 28 games over 10 rebounds, 25 double-doubles all of last year. So have all these notes, various progression of his shooting, first basketball shoe he ever had. So this just goes on forever. So I don't know if you really want to see that, but I just shared it with you. All right. Seems to be a lot of Enes versus Rudy talk right now, having us get rid of one and keep the other. Why can't we keep both? Is this completely out of the question money-wise? It's not. It's not at all out of the question money-wise. Somebody else might dictate that by paying Enes huge money, and then they could make him, somebody else could do it in restricted free agency. But they also then have to want to pay Enes that money. So no, it's not. And why we do this as a fan base, we've been Dante versus Trey all year too. I don't entirely get it. Oh my gosh, if all of our players played well and they became better, it'd be good for us, not bad for us. I've noticed when Trey is at the top of the key and calls for a pick with Enes tends to leave the screen early to roll to the hoop trying to get open, usually ends up with a not very good screen or an offensive foul, but it seems that. Well, Skylar, it's a good question, but it has to do with Enes reading the big. So if Enes comes and sets a pick and the big is heading out and hedging, depends who are playing. So the Lakers will hedge tonight. The Lakers will send their big out and almost trap Trey come with the pick. Well, then Enes is supposed to roll, right? So if the big loses contact with Enes, then Enes is supposed to roll or pop, depending on the play. So I think that's, so you got to understand what the play, like how it's being defended of, yes, we need to set better picks, but there's also a time when that's the right play to make, I guess is what I'm saying. Trent is just throwing everything out. I'll shut up after this, but just wanted to throw out some eye tests for Enes. Okay. A better Chris Humphries. Okay, but see, this is, or an age of Derek Coleman. See, this is what my point is on the comps on Enes that I find difficult. That's not a comp. A better Chris Humphries is not a comp. That's saying you're not Chris Humphries. You're better. Well, then who's better than Chris Humphries? Maybe it's not possible to be a better Chris Humphries. What is that? Like, is he Zach Randolph with creative offensive moves? That'd be pretty damn good. Probably shouldn't trade that. Is he Carl Landry? Might be Carl Landry. Carl Landry is better Chris Humphries. Then you can probably trade that. It's too hard to tell. Cody Ryan, by the way, big fan of your work. Thank you. I don't watch them live often, but listen to the podcast every day. Thanks for all your hard work. Cody, I appreciate it. And our final one from Rudy Wade. Hello, I'm Ukrainian. Thank you, Rudy. Good luck to all that's going on in the Ukraine. All right, that wraps us up. Friday, Lakers. Then we go on the road to San Antonio Sunday, Cleveland Wednesday, Milwaukee Thursday. All of you are coming and hanging out in my room and we're partying in San Antonio because we're there for like 4 days. Right? Remember? No, we're not. No, you're not. See ya. Talk to you soon.